Hey, I'm Ava. I run my own business making designer furniture. It's been a wild ride getting here by 33, but I wouldn't have it any other way. My life was mostly about work, though deep down, I hoped for more, like a family of my own. It was during one of my rare vacations down in Santa Cruz that everything changed. I was on the beach, trying to learn surfing, mostly failing and falling flat on my face into the waves. That's when Jake showed up with his surfboard under his arm, looking like he owned the place. "Need some help there?" he called out, jogging over. His voice was playful, a slight tease hanging in the air between us. I brushed the sand off my face, trying to look a bit less like a drowned rat. "Do I look like I need help?" He laughed, a deep, hearty sound that made me smile, despite my embarrassment. "Well, you ain't exactly riding the waves like a pro." I shrugged and gave him a challenging look. "Maybe I'm just enjoying my unique style of surfing. Ever thought of that?" "Unique's one word for it," he grinned, extending a hand to help me up. "Name's Jake. I teach surfing around here. How about I give you a few pointers? No charge." I figured why not? It wasn't like I had anything better to do, and the guy seemed genuine enough. So, I took him up on his offer. Turned out, Jake was a natural teacher. He was patient, explaining things clearly without making me feel like an idiot. "Balance is key," he instructed as he guided me on the board. "You gotta feel the wave, be part of it, not fight it." Easier said than done, but with Jake's guidance, I actually managed to stand and ride my first wave. I couldn't believe it. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off again. "That's it. You're a natural," Jake cheered, clapping his hands. I paddled back, flushed with excitement. "Thanks, Jake. I guess you're a pretty good teacher." That night, we talked like old friends. Turns out, Jake moved around a lot as a kid, never really settling anywhere until he hit the surf towns. He loved the ocean, said it was the only place he felt at home. "And what about you, Ava? What's your story?" I told him about my business, how I'd started from scratch, working day and night to make it something real. He listened, really listened. And that's how it started, really. A simple meeting on the beach that turned into dinner, and a conversation that felt like it could go on forever. I didn't know then that I'd fall for him, hard and fast. But that comes later. For now, it was just two people, laughing over fish tacos, the ocean whispering in the background. I smiled. Maybe I've just found that someone. Life after meeting Jake took a fast track, like a runaway train I had no interest in stopping. Our courtship was a whirlwind, filled with laughter, beach days, and long, heartfelt conversations under the stars. It didn't take long before he popped the question. We were at our favorite spot on the beach, the same place where we first met. "Hey Ava," Jake started, his voice unusually shaky. "You and me, we're kinda great together, huh?" I laughed, a little nervous, sensing something big was coming. "Kinda great? That's the understatement of the year." He took a deep breath and went down on one knee, right there in the sand. "Marry me, Ava. Let's not just be kinda great. Let's be amazing, together, forever." My heart skipped about a dozen beats. "Yes," I blurted out, more tears in my eyes than I'd care to admit. "Yes, I'll marry you, Jake." The wedding was everything I could have hoped for. It wasn't large, just close friends and family at a small chapel near the beach. The reception was at a local hall, decorated with simple flowers and strings of lights that made everything feel magical. But as we settled into married life, I started to see sides of Jake I hadn't known before. He loved the finer things, expensive clothes, high-end gadgets, and soon, a sleek sports car that ate up more money than I wanted to think about. One evening, as I was working through some designs, Jake strolled into my office, a glossy brochure in hand. "Hey babe, check this out," he said, laying the brochure on my desk. I glanced at it, my stomach dropping as I saw the price tag on the car he was pointing at. "Jake, this is really expensive. Are you sure we can manage this right now?" He leaned back, a frown creasing his brow. Come on, Ava. You make good money, right? We can afford a little luxury. I sighed, knowing I'd regret it, but also not wanting to fight. Fine, but this is a big purchase. We should be careful with spending for a while. Trust me, babe, it's all under control, he assured me, but his casual dismissal of my concern stung more than I expected. His parents, too, became a regular fixture in our lives. His mom, Marlene, and dad, Phil, were charming at first. They'd often come over, praising the house, the food, everything. But soon, every visit came with requests. Ava, dear, you have such good taste. Could you help us pick out some new curtains? We just don't know what to get, Marlene would say, her eyes darting around our living room appreciatively. Sure, I helped. I even paid, thinking it was no big deal, a way to make them feel welcome. One night, after they'd left from one of their many visits, I collapsed onto the couch next to Jake, exhaustion nipping at my heels. Your parents are really taking this family thing seriously, huh? He chuckled, not catching my tone. Yeah, they love you. You're like the daughter they never had. I bit my lip, not sure how to say what was on my mind without causing a rift. It's just, they expect a lot. Gifts, money, time. It's getting to be a bit much, don't you think? Jake's face hardened a little, his voice sharp. They're just being friendly, Ava. They like spending time with us, that's all. I wanted to argue, to tell him it felt like more than that, like we were a bank they could take from without asking. But I held my tongue, the words happy wife, happy life echoing ironically in my head. Jake's attitude toward having kids started to put a real strain on us. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but Jake's insistence on having a son was something else. It wasn't just a wish, it was an obsession. One night, after dinner, we sat down in the living room, each with a glass of wine, trying to unwind. That's when I decided to bring up the topic again. So, Jake, do you really think it's that important to have a boy? I asked, feeling my stomach knot up. Jake looked up then, his expression serious. Of course, Ava. You know how important it is for me to have a son. Someone to carry on the family name, you know? But what if we have a daughter? I pressed, needing him to see my point of view. He shrugged, a bit too casually. We keep trying until we get a boy, I guess. The simplicity in his answer chilled me. And what, the daughters we might have aren't good enough? Ava, come on, don't start that, he sighed, rubbing his temples. It's not about good enough. It's about having a son. My dad's the same way, you know that. The conversation hung heavily between us, unresolved. It was the same every time. Jake wanted a son so badly that it started to overshadow everything else in our relationship. When we learned that natural conception was off the table, IVF seemed like our only option. I threw myself into the process, researching clinics and treatments. The day we went to the clinic to start the treatment, the air between us was tense. In the waiting room, Jake fiddled with the pamphlets on the coffee table, his knee bouncing up and down nervously. So, they can do that thing, right? Where they make sure we get a boy, he whispered, leaning close. I frowned. It's not that simple, Jake. And it's not exactly ethical to pick and choose like you're ordering a custom car. The strain only deepened once we were in the thick of IVF treatments. The hormones, the doctor's appointments, and the waiting were brutal. And through it all, Jake's impatience for a son grew into something ugly, a shadow over our marriage. When we finally got the news that we were expecting, I was over the moon. But Jake's first question cut through my happiness like a knife. Did they say if it's a boy? It's too early to tell, I snapped, hurt by his one-track mind. And when the ultrasound revealed we were having twin girls, I saw the disappointment on his face. He tried to mask it, but it was too late, I'd seen it. That night, as we lay in bed facing away from each other, the distance between us felt wider than ever. When I gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Ellie, I was over the moon, but Jake, he couldn't hide his disappointment. He wanted a son so badly it clouded everything else. One evening, while the girls were cooing in their crib, Jake came into the nursery. The look on his face was serious, like he was about to say something important. "Ava, we need to try again for a son," he said bluntly, no preamble. I was taken aback. "Jake, look at what we've got. They're perfect. Why isn't this enough?" He paced a little, before stopping and turning to face me. "It's not about them not being enough. It's about continuing the family name, Ava. You know this." I sighed, feeling the weight of his expectations pressing down on me. "We'll see," I replied, not committing but not dismissing him either. It was the easiest way to end the conversation without another argument. Not long after, life decided to test me again. Phil, Jake's dad, got seriously ill. One evening, Marlene, his mom, came over, wringing her hands with worry. "Ava, the surgery Phil needs, it's urgent, and his insurance won't cover all of it. We need $50,000. The amount made me choke a little. "That's a lot, Marlene." "I know, dear, but we're desperate. We wouldn't ask if there was any other way." I thought about it, the businesswoman in me kicking in. "I can lend you the money, but I'll need you to sign a receipt. It's just a safety measure." Marlene bristled a bit at that. "Really, Ava, a receipt? We're family." I stood firm. "It's nothing personal, Marlene. It's just how I handle things professionally. It's a lot of money." Reluctantly, she agreed, and the receipt was signed. Jake didn't take it well when he found out. "You made my mom sign a receipt? What's wrong with you, Ava?" "It's how I protect our future, Jake. And it's for our girls," I shot back, frustrated at having to justify myself. Things settled down a bit until the girls were about 6 months old. That's when I found out I was pregnant again, naturally this time. I was shocked and happy but scared to tell Jake. His reaction was just as I feared. "A son, Ava. It has to be a son. I don't need another girl," he said coldly when I told him. Months later, I gave birth to another beautiful girl. I named her Mia. Jake didn't come to the hospital, not even to see Mia, or help me home. I ended up taking a taxi, 1,000 worries in my head. When I got home, the house was quiet except for the sound of the babysitter in the nursery. Jake wasn't there. He came back the next day, looking like he hadn't slept at home. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice tight with a mix of anger and despair. "Out," was all he said, walking past me like I wasn't even there. He didn't even glance at Mia, his own daughter. The hurt from that cut deeper than anything else. Here I was, trying to keep our family together, and there he was, pulling further away every day. It was clear to me then that something had to change. Things had been rough since Mia was born, and they weren't getting any easier. Jake was hardly ever home, always at work, or so he said, and whenever he was around, he was distant, detached. Our financial arrangement had become a sore point. He stopped contributing to the household, saying, "You make enough for both of us, Ava. Handle it." Trying to discuss our issues felt like talking to a brick wall. He'd come home late, often just as I was putting the girls to bed, avoiding any real conversation. Even my in-laws added to the strain. Marlene would come over, not to see the girls, but to ask for favors or gifts. "Ava, dear, could you help me pick out a new microwave? You always choose the best appliances," she'd say, her compliments thinly veiling her true intentions. She barely glanced at her granddaughters playing on the floor beside her. Phil, after recovering from his surgery, didn't hold back his thoughts either. During one of his rare visits, he said bluntly, "We hoped for a grandson, Ava. These girls, they're fine, but a boy would have been better." But the real shock came when Jake stumbled in one night, looking more frazzled than usual. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "Ava, I screwed up. Big time," he blurted out, sinking onto the sofa with his head in his hands. "What happened? Talk to me, Jake." "I lost money, a lot of it. At the casino. I've got creditors on my back now. They're not the kind of people you can just brush off," he admitted, his voice laced with panic. Fear gripped my heart, not just for our financial security, but for his safety. How much, Jake? 25,000, he whispered. Despite everything, my instinct was to protect him, our family. Okay, we'll handle this. But you have to promise me, no more gambling. Ever. I swear, Ava. No more gambling. I can't lose you, or the girls. So, I did what I thought was necessary. I transferred $25,000 to clear his debts. After that, Jake's demeanor changed overnight. He was home more, engaged with the girls, constantly showering me with affection and gratitude. You saved me, Ava. I don't know how to thank you enough, he'd say, kissing me goodbye in the mornings. Things had been looking up for a while, with Jake seemingly back on track and us spending more time as a family. I actually started to believe that maybe we had turned a corner, that maybe everything would be alright. But that hope shattered the night Jake didn't come home. I stayed up all night, pacing the floor, trying his phone over and over, but it just rang out. No answer. My mind raced with all sorts of dreadful thoughts. Had something happened to him? Or was it something else? By the time he walked through the door early the next morning, my relief turned to anger the moment I saw him casually stroll in and head straight to bed without so much as an explanation. Where have you been all night? I demanded, standing in the doorway of our bedroom. He mumbled something incoherent and pulled the covers over his head. Tired, talk later, he said, his voice muffled by the pillow. No, we're talking now, Jake. You can't just disappear and not expect me to worry. But he was already snoring, completely oblivious to my panic or anger. That was the last straw. I decided then and there that I needed to know what was really going on. The next day, I hired a private detective. A week later, the detective came back with news that crushed whatever was left of my trust. Jake had a mistress, and she was pregnant. Pregnant with a son. The irony of it stung like salt in a wound. But what cut even deeper was learning that the $25,000 I gave Jake to cover his supposed debts hadn't gone to any creditors. Instead, he'd bought his mistress a new car, a thank you present for carrying his son. I was seething with rage when I called Marlene, my mother-in-law, hoping for some semblance of support. Marlene, Jake has a mistress, and she's pregnant. And he bought her a car with the money that was supposed to pay off his debts, I said, my voice shaking with fury and disbelief. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, Marlene's voice, cold and sharp, came through. Well, maybe if you had given him a son, he wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you blaming me? For not having a son? That's why you think it's okay for your son to cheat? He needs an heir, Ava. It's important for men in our family to have a son, she insisted, as if that justified everything. So my daughters mean nothing? Is that it? I was nearly yelling now, my heart pounding in my chest. Ava, you need to calm down and stop overreacting. It's not the end of the world. You just need to take better care of yourself, be more attractive, maybe then my son wouldn't need to go elsewhere. The call ended with her hanging up on me, leaving me stunned and furious. The betrayal from Jake was one thing, but the betrayal from someone I considered family was too much. It was clear to me now that Jake and his family would never change. They'd chosen their path, and I needed to choose mine. Revenge wasn't a path I ever thought I'd take, but at that moment, it felt like the only way to reclaim some semblance of dignity. My next calls were to my lawyer, Claire, known for her no-nonsense approach to family law. Claire, I'm through being the understanding wife. It's time to push back, hard. I want full custody, and I want him to pay for what he's done, I told her, my voice steely. That evening, when Jake came home, I was ready for him. The moment he walked through the door, I could see the arrogance in his stance, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break. Jake, we need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. He smirked, tossing his keys on the table. What's up? Another lecture about how I should spend my time? No, not a lecture. I know about your mistress, and the child. I'm done. Here, I said, pushing the divorce papers across the table to him. I've signed them. It's over. His smirk vanished, replaced by a frown. You're serious? Look, I'm tired of this life too. Your constant nagging, the kids screaming. I was going to leave anyway. Good. You should leave. But first, the car keys. You'll return the car and the $25,000 you spent on your girlfriend. It wasn't your money to spend, I demanded, my tone unyielding. He scoffed. Come on, Ava, be reasonable. I need that money for my son. You can't do this to me. You can't just strip me of everything. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm adding a lawsuit for the emotional distress you caused. You and your mistress will both pay, I declared, the finality in my voice echoing in the room. The legal battle that followed was intense. Jake tried to argue that he had no money, that I was being unreasonable and cruel. But the evidence was stacked against him, the transactions, the messages, his continual deceit. It was all laid bare for the court to see. The judge was stern as he handed down the verdict. Mr. Thompson, it seems you've not only breached the trust of your marriage, but also misused funds for personal gain at the expense of your family. You are hereby ordered to pay $20,000 in damages to Mrs. Thompson, another $20,000 from your mistress, and $400 per month per child in alimony. Jake's face during the ruling was a picture of shock and defeat. Forced to take out a loan, he had to scramble to cover the payments ordered by the court. The courtroom drama had barely settled when my in-laws decided to confront me. They stormed into my house like a hurricane, blaming me for everything under the sun. You've destroyed our family and ruined our son, Marlene shouted, waving her arms dramatically. Phil chimed in, his voice just as accusing. You took everything from him, made him out to be a monster. I listened quietly, letting them vent their anger and frustration. They hurled insult after insult, but I stood my ground, the calm in the storm. After they had exhausted their tirade, I calmly pulled out the receipt for the $50,000 I had loaned them for Phil's surgery. You owe me $50,000. I was generous then, but now I need that money back. Their anger turned to panic. We don't have that kind of money, Ava. We're old, we're not working, Marlene pleaded, tears starting to form in her eyes. That's not my problem. You signed an agreement. You owe me this money, I stated firmly, my resolve unshaken by their distress. Seeing that I wasn't backing down, Phil resignedly nodded. We'll find a way. We'll pay you back. True to their word, they took out a loan to pay me back and had to return to work to manage the payments. It was tough for them, but it was the consequence of their actions and decisions. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. I focused on raising my daughters and running my business. Despite the challenges, I never regretted standing up for myself. My girls were thriving, growing more beautiful and intelligent each day, and my business was doing well, giving us a comfortable life. Jake's fate turned out quite differently. Burdened by debt and unable to keep up with the financial demands of his actions, he was forced to work multiple jobs. He left his mistress after she gave birth to a daughter, not the son he so desperately wanted. The irony of it wasn't lost on me, but I felt no pleasure in his misfortunes. Months later, a knock came at my door. It was Marlene and Phil, looking older and more worn than I remembered. Ava, we've been thinking a lot about what happened. We're sorry, Marlene started, her voice trembling. Phil nodded, his eyes avoiding mine. We miss the girls. We were wondering if, maybe we could see them? I looked at them, seeing the genuine regret in their eyes, but the pain they had inflicted was too deep, and their betrayal too significant. I appreciate your apology, I began, my voice steady. But I can't let you back into our lives. Not after everything. The girls are doing well, and we're moving on. It's better this way. Marlene's eyes filled with tears, and Phil placed a hand on her shoulder. We understand. We wanted to try, Phil said, his voice thick with emotion. I wish you the best, but please respect our wishes and give us our space," I replied, closing the door gently but firmly. Turning back to my home, to the laughter of my daughters playing in the living room, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had come through so much, their little faces reminders of why every struggle was worth it. I had made tough decisions, but they were the right ones for us.